Have you ever wanted to be the bad guy? Like, the bad guy? Well, boy oh boy, do I have a path for you. Welcome back to Kaiserredux. Only it isn't just Kaiserredux, it's worse Kaiserredux. More specifically, Rotter-Morgan Kaiserredux. And I'm sure you all know what the words Rotter-Morgan entails. Today I am playing as the propaganda minister path for Germany, and I'll do a lot of conquering and maybe, just maybe a little bit of racism. However, before I get the funny Gobbel man in charge, I need to play as the Kaiser, but he won't be here for long. I doubt I need to explain the lore to any of you guys, but in case I do, the gist is that Germany won World War I, and now stuff is really weird. First of all, our economy crashes, and now my country is ruined, but it's not my job to fix everything. Throughout the year, I'm supposed to just take decisions that intentionally ruin my country until the people have had enough and revolt. But in the meantime, I just have to wait and squash any rebellion to my neighbors or allies. The first revolt would be in Belarus, but I was given the ability to directly intervene, so the war went about as well as you would expect.
Shoot me in front of everybody? Huh? Come on.
With Belarus curbed, I just had to keep on committing economic suicide, and that was about it for a while. After more events about banks collapsing, our people starving, and just suffering in general, the Dutch had a really funny idea and decided to encroach on Flanders, which was in my sphere. Obviously, I couldn't let this slide, so I just quickly pacified the nation and brought them into my sphere as well, at the mere cost of my economy now being in shambles. The people were understandably not too happy, and so large-scale revolts were beginning in the west. This symbolized the real beginning of the end for the Kaiser, as not long after, these revolts had turned into a full-scale revolution. Now this is where I had to hop off the Kaiser ship, and so it was now finally time for me to take the mantle of the revolution. But annoyingly, the vile French had taken advantage of our weakness and seized Alsace, Nancy, and Luxembourg. But I'll be back for those titles later. For now, I need to focus on kicking the Kaiser out of Germany. Looking through my generals, I can see that we don't have the brightest minds here to lead our army, but we have to make do with what we have. And not long after, the German Civil War had begun. And now finally, the fun can commence. Little side note though, the Dutch who I had invaded and puppeted earlier were still with the Kaiser, so I sadly had to deal with two fronts. But I'll save my yapping for later. In the meantime, enjoy the time-lapse, guys. And with that, the Civil War has ended, in a leftist W. Sadly, everything wasn't sunshine and rainbows though, as I was still at war with Indonesia, and the Germans were also still alive in Limburg. But after some consul trickery, I could officially declare victory in the Civil War, and begin moving towards deciding my leadership. Other things have been going on in the world though. First of all, Poland stole some of our eastern lands, Prussia declared independence, the Kaiser fled to Africa, and the Second American Civil War had begun. Sadly, I was forced into the Internationale, but that wasn't a big deal. And a couple of weeks later, the first Congress of the German Unions had been called, and I was given the ability to either play some socialists or Goebbels. And I think you guys know who I chose. Upon choosing Goebbels, I was immediately booted from the Internationale and nerfed into oblivion with the French essentially seizing the Rhine. All of this didn't matter though, as I now finally had the gamers in charge. And looking through my focus tree, I can see that something was going on. I can't tell you what, cause I honestly don't know much myself, but it's something. Hey man, all I really see are just a lot of green numbers, and I'm here for it. But it doesn't seem like anybody wants Goebbels here, as immediately, he almost dies on the toilet. However, I want to stick with the propaganda man himself, so I won't be killing him off. Aside from Goebbels almost shitting his intestines out, nothing is happening, aside from me reforming the economy, so I think it's fair if I skip this initial stage. Half a year later, and now my entire economy is revitalized along with my nation being healed. I just simply need to purge any remaining anti-Goebbels elements that may linger in the nation. The events for this path are pretty funny though, as in this one, Goebbels literally knows that he's an incel, but he does his best to deny it. I mean, look at that chopped chin, man. No pure Aryan has a chin like that. Meanwhile, the Strasserists and the VS, who are pretty much the SA from our timeline, led by our friendly neighborhood gay Nazi Ernst Röhm, were planning a putsch against Goebbels in about a year. And so, it was now my objective to try and prevent that from happening by taking focuses and doing decisions to limit their influence. This whole preventing the putsch mechanic was pretty time-consuming, but very simple. I just had to lower their influence by doing propaganda and enacting purges until Goebbels' influence reached 95%, in which I could reform the VS, ditch Röhm, and kill Strasser. But for now, I had to go through that process and read events about the lore for this nation, until eventually, I could declare Goebbels as the Volksführer, and get even more totally fair and not broken modifiers. Thankfully, I had also rehabilitated a decent chunk of the generals from before, so now I didn't have to rely on exclusively racists to lead my army. I wonder though, what happened to Goebbels being my field marshal? Like, he led my army during the Civil War, but now he's just gone. Anyways, Goebbels is now the Volksführer, and that's quite a portrait. But from now on, not much else would happen, aside from the painter getting a movie. I was just slowly reducing the opposition's influence for now. Quick side note, the path had also given me 4 insanely broken divisions. But a good 5 months later, I could finally reform the VS, and enact what is literally just the Night of the Long Knives, and kill everybody who opposes me. With Röhm now dead, a certain chicken farmer took his place as well. Yeah, this country is so cooked. As if Goebbels wasn't bad enough, now Himmler is his right-hand man. Anyways, with nothing holding me back anymore, I could finally retake the Rhine from the French and begin remilitarizing. I needed at least 500,000 men out in order to unlock my expansionism tree, so after deploying some divisions, I could look around and decide on my first targets. And that first target turned out to be Austria. It was kind of rough to break through Czechia, as there were forts along the Sudetenland, but after some time I could seize Prague and then take down the nation. With Czechia out of my way, I broke into Hungary and tried to get behind the Austrian lines to snake them down. But this didn't work too well, as the Alps had stalled out a lot of my advances. So I was now stuck scrambling around the nation, taking as many cities as I could to make them capitulate. Until eventually, Austria had finally died, and I had essentially doubled in size. I only took Austria, Czechia, and Galicia though, but I was able to core these lands through, let's just say, different methods. With the Habsburg domain now subjugated, I looked east to reclaim my lands in Poland and take a couple of prizes along the way too. Breaking the Polish lines was quite easy, so I pushed towards the Prussian border and created a large pocket around Poznań. I was also now at the gates of Warsaw, and after ramming into the city enough, it had finally fallen into my hands. I can only imagine what the city looks like right now as I take it. Quick side note though, the Belgrade Pact had attacked my Hungarian and Croat puppets, and I didn't realize it, so I would have to deal with them in the future. Anyways, Poland wasn't long for this world with their capital now gone, and so they capitulated quite fast. Ukraine did require some effort, as they had a lot of divisions, but as soon as I broke through Galicia, it was curtains for them. The only thing that they had going for themselves was their amount of cities, so it did take a while to capitulate them, but once I did, the Imperium had surrendered. With the East now having accepted my benevolent rule, I turned my attention down south to quickly destroy Serbia and Romania. Wilhelm had also died in Africa, meaning that he'll never be able to see the light of Germany once again. His fiefdom wasn't long for this world in the first place though, as the Internationale were already slowly picking apart Middle Africa. Anyways, I joined my puppets' wars against Serbia and Romania, and it didn't take long to bring them under my rule, as I easily pushed their troops in Croatia and Hungary back. I had also invaded Denmark on the side in order to reclaim Schleswig-Holstein, but Serbia and Romania had capitulated soon after, bringing the majority of the Balkans under my sphere as well. Denmark fell soon after, because, well, it's Denmark. And finally, I took a little detour through Belgium just to bring all of the Benelux under my control, along with peacefully marching into and reintegrating the reactionary Prussians. And so now, with all of the side missions now settled, I looked west to the syndicalist menace. I wanted to wait a little before attacking them though, so I took a break from conquest to build my army and settle a little Balkan dispute. Not long after, I deemed myself ready for taking down the French, and my troops crossed the border. The French didn't have any defenses set up though, as they were busy in Africa, so I was able to quickly stroll into Paris. Funnily enough, Goebbels got to visit the city as well. And the rest of France fell quite quickly, as they weren't able to organize an effective resistance in time. This whole invasion really reminds me of our timeline when the Germans invaded France. It was just so easy to take them down, and they capitulated so fast. Quick little side note, I don't know where to put this in, but I also declared total war, so funny Goebbels meme, am I right? Anyways, with France now dead, I now just had to sea lion, which was also quite easy. I got green seas as soon as I set out my navy, and so I naval invaded around Hull. Despite not sending that many troops, it was very easy to secure the landing since the British had, strangely enough, sent everything to Africa as well, and so it didn't take that much to capitulate them. I quickly strolled into their major cities, and then the British threw in the towel, along with the rest of the Internationale. And so now all of Western Europe has joined my glorious faction, along with some of West Africa. Naturally, I dismantled the English and the French, but strangely enough I had also established Burgundy in the process, making Speer my new right-hand man. And right after that, I had established Gross Deutschland, and I got myself a little super event. After that, I had finally turned my attention east as well, onto the Russian horde. I was also given a decision about changing my flag, and I decided on choosing what is, in my opinion, the least cancerous. Now this is where the path starts to get really weird, with some weird event chain about some castle in Nancy. But at this point I didn't really care about the events, so I was honestly just skimming. All I know for sure is that the event chain is about Himmler, esoteric bullshit, and racism. Just like the rest of this path, man. Sadly, I was running out of non-racist generals as well, so I'm being forced to use gamers to lead my army. I'm just trying to imagine German high command, and I must say, it isn't pretty. Anyways, after finishing the living space focus, I finally had the ability to both attack Russia and establish my own quote-unquote Volkskommissariats. Sadly, I was slightly outmatched in division count by the Russians, but to counteract that, I had a far superior industry, way better modifiers, and they were fighting a war against Japan in the Far East. So this clearly was the best time to attack. As soon as I did, they completely melted against me. I was expecting at least some resistance, but imagine my surprise when I found out that I could just battle plan and beat them. If the Russians can't even counter a simple battle plan, then it's clear that they aren't long for this world. So once again, I'm gonna do another time lapse. Enjoy the gameplay, guys.
Weil mein Daddy dich gut leiden kann, borgt uns sein Auto. Ja, borgt uns sein Auto, weil mein Daddy dich gut leiden kann.
with that, the Russians have finally thrown in the towel. And I now had control over all of their important western lands, combined with me annexing my Baltic and Ukrainian puppets, so I could now create the Volkskommissariats. Now, I just need to make sure that any European nations that for some reason aren't a part of me, are a part of me. And that starts off with me mopping up the former Russian allies, Bulgaria and Albania. Also, I established the Volkskommissariats in the east, with some very familiar faces, I must say. Anyways, Bulgaria and Albania quickly fell, since they obviously can't stand up against my greater state. Then I turned my gaze to the Nordics, the Italians, and the Ottomans. But interestingly, Russia couldn't cope with their loss and collapsed into what is literally just TNO Russia. It's literally the New Order, man. I swear. I mean, for fuck's sake, we have Omsk. If Himmler Burgundy wasn't enough to confirm your TNO suspicions, then Warlord Russia certainly proves it. Anyways, I just mopped up Finland and Sweden, which was quite easy, and then I established a Nordic puppet as well. And then I took down Italy, which was far harder than it should have been. But for now, that didn't matter, as I could now access my final focus tree, and I got one more little super event to go along with it. And yeah, I'm just gonna stop it right there because I don't want to get my channel a strike. The north fell quite fast as they were pretty weak, but then came the south, and the Sicilians had pretty good divisions and quite a bit of them, so they were able to hold. But that didn't mean that they were invincible. Eventually I got a breakthrough, and they capitulated them. After that, I had invaded the Ottomans, Greeks, and the Norwegians, but I didn't bother to record me invading them since the game was lagging a lot at this point. Norway and Greece were also in the Entente, but I didn't care enough to try and destroy the faction, so I decided to end it there. One more thing though, I was also given the ability to just invade the remaining Russian warlords, conquer the Kaiser, in Africa, but I didn't care enough to stick around to do all that, so I'm just gonna end it here. I hope you all enjoyed another one of Goebbels' wild rides on this channel. If you enjoyed the video, then maybe consider liking it, subscribing, or even checking out another one of my videos. Anyways, that'll do it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed the video, so yeah, have a good one. See ya.